Breaking news coming in, viewers. Kuwait's military has said that it is responding to hostile missile and drone threats. This is in a post on social media. The General Staff of the Kuwaiti Armed Forces confirmed that any explosions that may be heard are the results of air defense systems intercepting hostile targets. And this as the strikes on Gulf states continue with the war in West Asia now having completed a month. That's the big development we're tracking for you at this hour. Kuwaiti armed forces are defending against incoming hostile projectiles, drones and missiles. This is what they've put out on their social media platform as well, mentioning that it is responding to hostile missiles and threats from drones. General Staff of the Kuwaiti Armed Forces confirmed that any explosions that may be heard are the result of air defense systems intercepting hostile targets. I'll go back to Colonel David B. DeRoche, who's here with us on World DNA. Colonel, we were just discussing this, that the strikes in the Gulf have only increased. You have your views on what that looks like in terms of Iran. It's not a good idea, is what you're suggesting, for Iran to continue with that. But the fact is that it is still continuing. And let me just quickly add, this is only for the sake of our viewers, that Iran said that if we are targeted, we'll go after all these bases that the US has in the region. Of course, those targets, those strikes have not been limited to the strikes on US bases. There have been strikes across many other regions in the Gulf, some that Iran has not accepted responsibility for. So at this point, do you find this as any kind of an indication that in a couple of weeks this will end?
Well, it's kind of a non sequitur. I think that you know, it will probably end within a few weeks. I thought it would be over by now, to be honest. So discount my views accordingly. But you know, it's important to note that the Gulf states, who are taking more missiles than Israel has, they denied the U.S. access, basing, and overflight for these operations. They basically said, we don't want to be a part of this. And any U.S. assets that wanted to take part in it had to leave. So what remained were bilateral training missions and defense assets that were working with the Gulf states and they got attacked anyhow. So I think that's a strategic mistake by Iran, and I think that, you know, it's quite possible that we'll see in the next few weeks the Gulf states actually conducting active military operations against Iran, in particular the United Arab Emirates, which cannot allow this to become a precedent. It seems as though this is about more than striking out against the U.S. I think there's also an effort to discredit an alternative and much more attractive and successful model of Islamic development in places like Dubai than you have in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that seems to be something that's existential and that honestly won't be resolved until the regime in Iran is defeated. That,
understood,
you know, this indiscriminate attack does not give me hope that we'll see a short end to the war.
Understood. And Colonel, and this is essentially what I wanted to ask you. At what point do the Gulf states decide that, okay, we'll need to get involved? Because they haven't done so, at least they've not accepted any attack from their side towards Iran. They've maintained that we have not carried out any military attacks on Iran at this point, whether it's in retaliation or otherwise. But let me quickly also understand, you mentioned that you weren't expecting this war to continue till now. Given your military background, do you feel that's a sentiment across the U.S. administration as well, that they didn't expect this to last so long? Yeah,
I think so. I think that what really surprised them was Iran's willingness to attack neutral states and neutral civilian shipping. So instead of the political imperative when Iran did that was assets that were being dedicated in a very disciplined fashion at the regime leadership, the Revolutionary Guard leadership, the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program. Some of those assets had to be diverted in order to help protect the sea lanes and to destroy Revolutionary Guard naval assets, which are, you know, small boats. They're easy to hide. So I think that diversion was probably a real factor there. But again, that's a tactical problem for the United States, but it is a strategic problem for Iran. They've basically told their neighbors, you cannot live in peace with us the regime has to change for these guys to live in peace. So it's a problem, and I think a lot of people are surprised by it, and I certainly was.
There's the other objective, the other perspective to it is the Iranian perspective, Colonel, where they say that you can't live in peace until you have US bases located. So they're putting it on the US, that the US is the reason why these attacks are carrying out. Of course, they've not been limited to the US bases. But let me just also come to this point, and this is something I'm happy that we are having this conversation, because I'd like to get your opinion on it. The US military assets, they've always carried this impression. They are strong. It's the strongest military in the world, goes without saying. But just look at the damage that it has taken, whether it's the F-15s, the famed F-35 also taking a hit, the high-cost radars, and then the THAAD systems, which, as per reports, are also deployed around Dimona and Arad, and they could not stop an incoming missile from Iran. Do you find the facade of, or the image of, unassailable US assets getting dented the longer this war prolongs?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that professional soldiers wouldn't be surprised given the amount of hours flown and the distance flown. And it's worth noting that, there's been no reports of fighter aircraft launched from GCC states, which are very close to Iran. They're still flying from way over in the Levant. I think it would be surprising that you would not lose a Joint Strike Fighter to, just to maintenance or some sort of ground fire. And it appears that we've lost one. That actually, I think for a professional soldier or airman would not be surprised by that. The 3 F-15s lost to Kuwaiti friendly fire, that is an extremely embarrassing incident in coalition warfare. But the embarrassment,
I get it.
It's not entirely American embarrassment, but I mean, it's certainly not as cost free as we would hope. But we've had this before. I mean, we lost an F-117 stealth fighter in operations in Kosovo. That was a real shock because that was considered to be invulnerable. When you put an airplane up, a certain percentage of them are not going to come back, and when you operate under remote conditions, these are just problems.
Colonel, thank you for taking that question, because it took me some time to find somebody who would be willing to engage in this conversation and take that question from me. There would be more to discuss as the war only seems to be continuing. That was Colonel David B. DeRoche joining me here on World DNA. Always a pleasure speaking with you, sir.
It's a real honor. Thank you. Ask anytime.